told your friend you're not okay.
K-pop news breaking. Goyang Stadium transformed into an unexpectedly epic stage tonight. The torrential rain, which should have been a hindrance, instead transformed into an artistic element, transforming BTS's concert into a world-class cinematic masterpiece. And amidst the roar of the rain, one name shone brightest: Taehyung. This surprising night began when thousands of ARMY filled the stadium with fervent enthusiasm, even though the rain had begun to gently fall from the start. Not a single one of them intended to back down. With colorful raincoats or even no protection at all, the sea of fans stood tall, as if ready to face anything to watch their idols perform. The initially light rain gradually intensified into a torrent, drenching the audience seats and the stage floor, but the enthusiasm didn't diminish in the slightest. The cheers continued, mixed with the sound of raindrops hitting the ceiling and the ground. When the stage lights began to brighten, every corner of the stadium reflected the rays of light that passed through the curtain of rain. That moment instantly transformed the atmosphere from an ordinary concert into a visual masterpiece. BTS appeared with an energy unaffected by the weather, but among them all, Taehyung immediately became the center of gravity, drawing all attention. With his wet hair gently clinging to his forehead and his intense, lifelike expression, Taehyung created an atmosphere that's hard to describe. Every small step he took on the slippery stage seemed to slice through the silence and draw all eyes solely on him. There was something different tonight, something that made his performance not only beautiful, but also full of emotional depth. During one part of the song, Taehyung stood still for a moment, letting the rain soak his entire body. The dim spotlight fell on his water-drenched face, creating the illusion of a dramatic film scene unfolding before his eyes. Thousands of phones were simultaneously raised, capturing the unrepeatable moment, and within minutes, it was shared on social media as one of the most iconic concert highlights of the year. The costume he wore that night was no less eye-catching. The wet material clung to his body, forming an artistic silhouette that accentuated every curve of his movement. The audience held their breath every time he moved his hand or tilted his head, as if every detail of his body was dancing with the thousands of raindrops. While dramatic visuals are usually only seen through the production filter of a music video, that night Taehyung presented them live on stage without any manipulation. When he reached the most emotional part of the song, Taehyung closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the rain penetrate the rhythm of the music. The combination created a harmony that was never planned, but felt perfect. His notes remained steady and strong, even as the rain fell harder. There was no wavering, no moment of hesitation, just Taehyung's vocals flowing smoothly, piercing the sound of the rain and directly striking the hearts of his listeners. He often smiled slightly as the weather became more extreme, as if treating the rain as a new friend on stage that night. ARMY in the front row even said that when Taehyung looked up at the sky, letting the rain drip down on him, the sight was so magical that it brought some of them to tears. At certain moments, Taehyung slowly approached the edge of the stage, despite the slippery floor. He waved, bowed slightly, and looked at the fans with a warm smile that remained even though his face was covered in water. The stadium camera captured a close-up of his wet face, with raindrops streaming down his cheeks like the climax of a drama. The image immediately went viral and was hailed as one of the best close-ups ever captured during a BTS concert. His usually sharp and precise movements now seemed freer, following the rhythm of the rain. In one choreography, he adjusted his steps to avoid slipping, but the direction of his movements actually made his performance even more elegant and natural. The lights reflecting off the stage created a sparkle that followed his movements, giving the impression of him dancing on a living water surface. As the song slowed, Taehyung walked slowly through the rain, letting the atmosphere speak for itself without much movement. His emotional gaze caused the thousands of spectators to fall silent, lost in the serene moment. No words were needed, just Taehyung, the rain, and the meaningful silence. The other BTS members, on the other hand, performed exceptionally well, but the story that night seemed to revolve around Taehyung, who inadvertently took over the concert's narrative. It was after the final song ended that Taehyung's most unforgettable moment occurred, a scene that brought the entire stadium to a brief silence before erupting in cheers that echoed throughout Goyang. As the members began to gather in the center of the stage for their closing salute, the heavy rain suddenly slowed, as if nature itself was making room for the evening's peak emotions. Taehyung, who had been standing slightly behind, suddenly stepped forward, passing the members, glancing back with a small, sincere smile. The large lights projected from the right side of the stage illuminated his figure, creating a warm, diffused light that clashed with the cold air and lingering raindrops. The scene seemed surreal, like the final scene of a major film. He gazed out at the thousands of armies still waving their light sticks, some with trembling hands from the cold, others from the tears that continued to flow. Taehyung raised one hand, opening his palm, and let the remaining raindrops drip onto his skin. That simple gesture successfully brought tears to the eyes of the thousands of spectators once again, as if Taehyung wanted to convey that tonight was a gift he enjoyed just as much as the fans. Then, in a voice soft yet powerful enough to cut through the din, Taehyung spoke. Although only a short sentence came out, his words echoed powerfully to the farthest corners of the stadium. He thanked the fans for their support, that tonight was one of his most precious memories, and that the rain wasn't an obstacle, but rather, a friend who came to make the stage more beautiful. Those last words instantly became a viral quote, filling social media platforms within seconds. Meanwhile, the live broadcast camera closed in on his face again, the water streaming down his forehead, his slightly trembling lips, and the calm look in his eyes created a nearly impossible-to-fake image. Army at home watching on screens admitted to feeling goosebumps, feeling as if they, too, were standing in the rain with Taehyung. As the other members took turns delivering their closing remarks, Taehyung remained standing with his arms crossed naturally, watching them with a small smile. Every time the camera accidentally or intentionally landed on him, his expression was always calm and grateful, as if still absorbing every moment of what had just happened. And as they prepared to leave the stage, Taehyung did something completely unexpected. Instead of heading straight backstage as usual, he turned toward the slightly darker side of the stage, where the rain fell harder due to the lack of protection. He walked slowly toward that side, allowing himself to get completely soaked again. Fans watching the scene on the big screen screamed hysterically, while those in the front row filmed non-stop. As he reached the edge of the stage, Taehyung bent down slightly to pick up a flower that one of the army had given him during the encore. The flower was soaked, its petals stuck together, but Taehyung held it tenderly as if it were something very precious. He held it to his chest briefly, then looked out at the sea of spectators once more, a gaze full of gratitude yet heavy, as if he were reluctant to end the night. When he finally walked back to the center of the stage, the rain came down harder again, creating a dramatic effect that seemed designed specifically for him. And right in the middle of the stage, before he finally stepped out, Taehyung turned his face skyward and closed his eyes. The water droplets that fell on his face reflected the light, creating a star-like effect. Army in the upper stands cheered loudly, holding up banners, chanting his name over and over again. That moment instantly became a key symbol of the Goyang concert. The image of Taehyung with wet hair, eyes closed, his face turned skyward, holding a rain-damaged flower. Several professional photographers and attendants declared it the best concert image they'd taken in years. When all the members finally exited and the stage lights dimmed, Army remained. They spontaneously sang fan chants and BTS songs, as if they didn't want the night to end. Their voices echoed, mingling with the sound of the rain, which was now beginning to subside. It was as if nature itself was gently bringing the concert to a close.